Greetings everyone, and welcome to the AI World Summit 2020, organized by MyFinB Group. Today is the second day of our event where we have our very first special guest. As part of a Fireside Chat series, she is none other than Dr. Cheemin Bo-Linn, CEO of Peritus Partners Incorporation, BOE Audit Committee, Tech Cyber Lead. Dr. Cheemin also served as a board director of BMCH. Prior to that, she also served as independent board of director at 7 public and private companies in Canada, US and Europe. She was named as top 50 board of directors by the NATEL Association of Corporation Directors. Hosted by MyFinB CEO, Professor M. Nazri, Dr. Cheemin will be touching on the topic of digital transformation and what it takes to deal with the new norm, with speed, complexity, and uncertainties. Now I leave the digital stage to the host to take over. Over to you, Professor Nazri.
Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Nazri speaking. Thanks for joining us on the second day of our session. We are very happy and privileged to have Dr. Bo-Linn, and she sometimes likes to be known as Cheemin. I'll prefer to call her Dr. Bo-Linn to extend the formality to her. She is a person of many credentials, many accomplishments, and certainly a person of repute, right? And she has many things to share with us on the topic of digital transformation. What I like about Dr. Bo-Linn's profile is that she has various angles or perspectives that she can share with us. One is that she's a board member. Second, she's a practitioner or advisor to many companies, especially she sits on the board of listed companies, yeah? So we can learn a lot about the kind of challenges and opportunities that they see as a corporate. And third, she's also an advocate for technological-based education. So we love to hear how she views several issues or questions that we're going to pose to her based on these 3 or more perspectives. Most importantly is that it's, of course, she's a woman of substance, right? In a male-dominated sector, and statistics have proven that more than 60% of the tech sector is dominated by males. So we are very, of course, curious. One of the themes and tracks that we have in this AI summit is to talk about women in tech, how actually people thrive and grow, right? In general, then of course within the gender perspective, how women actually manage to grow and thrive in this very dynamic sector. So yesterday, in fact, we had a study published on and presented on how successful women in tech actually dominate the companies that they manage, and how we link their personality attributes, we link their business strategies to the financial outcome based on the companies that they managed. So it gives me great pleasure to bring Dr. Bo-Linn into this discussion. We have 5 questions to go through in the next 45 minutes or so. And but before that, maybe we would like Dr. Bo-Linn to come in and say hello to everyone. The format will be done in a Fireside Chat. So it's very casual, very informal, but certainly the contents and the information that she'll share with us will be very pertinent to the issue of digital transformation and the impact of AI has on industries, on ourselves. Over to you, Dr. Bo-Linn, as a quick form of introduction.
Thank you so much, Nazri. It is absolutely my honor to be your Fireside keynote speaker. I wanted to reflect just a bit on digital transformation in AI and provide you just a very quick snapshot. We are in the 4th wave of what I call the Industrial Revolution. It's the most exciting time that I recall. It's going to be more disruptive than the advent of the personal computer. In my opinion, with technology innovation, it's doubling every 2 years. It's evolving exponentially. And with the impact of AI, the possibilities are unlimited. Just for AI alone, the addressable market opportunity is already surpassed 153 billion. So my goodness, it's hard to believe that AI is over 80 years old. But what we have now is new technology such as IoT and the ability to connect all these devices. So when you put an 80-year-old technology and mesh it up with, let's say, IoT, you have a whole new world of new discovery that we can explore together. See, IoT, as an example, only came to the scene about 7 years ago, and already data collection is exploding. Just imagine, over the last 2 years, 90% of the data has been generated, and AI plays a key role. It seems like just the other day, when most of us, all of us, or most of us were not born, in 1956 was the first time AI was coined, alluding to a machine which can use available information to reason, problem solve, and make decisions. What I think of as a personification of a human inside of a machine, something that can think or come close to it. So with AI systems, which is a key part of digital transformation, what we'll talk about over the next 45 minutes is how key AI is. I think if I look at one of the main tenets, one of the basic tenets of AI that I think prevails and help us leap forward as far as technology and getting insight is the AI systems. From AI systems, the learning is from the data itself, the IoT sensors, which provide real-time feedback, rather than what we used to be handcuffed to is limited programmed instructions. So that's what gets me excited about AI within the context of digital transformation. So our road to, I'd say, make the impossible possible, to collect, analyze, and have more formidable decision-making that is actionable is now with AI. So those are just some of my thoughts about artificial intelligence within the context of digital transformation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bo-Linn, for the very succinct and very relevant statements that you've just given. Now, you are the CEO of Peritus Partners, right? And
yes.
You've carried out senior roles in IBM, handling their P&Ls, M&A partners, amongst others. You've done revenue generating focus work. You've done very much technical work before. I mean, you graduated and you earned a doctorate degree in computer-based information, amongst others. So like I said, you're a person of many talents and many roles that you've played. You also sat on the audit chair of the audit committee of some of the industries and corporations that you represent, including risk and ESGs and all that. So you've been recognized quite a bit, in the as the most influential Silicon Valley executive, top 100 CEOs leading STEM, amongst others. You've also been involved in some form of educational work by virtue of you being a visiting professor for some of the leading universities in the world. Now, with all these multiple roles that you carried out, you represent, and you basically advocate, right? What does AI mean to you personally as Cheemin, right? As a person, what does it mean to you personally, and in the line of work that you play, the roles that you play, right? How does AI actually impact? I know you've explained that in your introduction, but from a personal standpoint, what does it mean to you? Is it something that you will bring it to your deathbed? Is it something that you would think about morning, day, and night, right? How does it appeal to you emotionally, psychologically, as well as intellectually on this? Over to you, Dr. Bo-Linn.
Thank you so much. When I think of artificial intelligence, what I think about it is not just a pure play technology. A technology in it itself is not as valuable as being able to apply technologies such as artificial intelligence into the business world and create value out of it. So when I look at artificial intelligence, as well as some of the other digital technologies, you need to think about it. How, for example, AI, how can it make life better? How can it make a company more safe? When I think of AI, what I think about, for example, one of the best benefits is automation. So what we have now is, even without all the formalized digital transformation programs that we've all heard about, and companies are, of course, at different stages of digital transformation, one thing is constant. Businesses are collecting enormous amounts of data. And if you think about it, digital technology such as artificial intelligence, what they do is they help us build a strong, safe, and more efficient company. I think the key right now is the key challenge or pain point is not only digitizing processes, but getting ready access to the data and combining it together to make informed decisions. So you mentioned a bunch of different areas and different roles that I have played. AI is very key in the finance world, for example, in audit, to mitigate risk. AI is very important in the health field, as far as going through and analyzing huge realms of data to give to the frontline worker. So AI is actually, should not be thought of as a silo. It actually should be pervasive throughout the organizations. And later on, if you don't mind, I'll give you some examples of how machine learning and artificial intelligence is playing a key role in a lot of people's different lives.
So in this regard, you talk about how they play a key difference in people's lives, right? How does AI actually solve the pain points of solving lives through the management of data, getting insights, and making decisions out of them to improve people's lives? How do you connect the relationship between data and improving people's lives in some of the examples that hopefully you'll show us?
Yeah, good point, Raji. Thanks for bringing that up. So let me give you an example. One such pioneer company that is in the digital transformation, artificial intelligence sector is Blackline Safety. Under the leadership of CEO Cody Slater, I recently joined their board as a director. So let me kind of use that as an example. Based on their expansion, they were looking to expand the expertise and how they can further support digital transformation and artificial intelligence. Blackline Safety is an industrial connected worker company. They've already collected, like we talked about, all this massive data. They've already collected more than 160 billion data points related to connected workers, their safety status. They're collecting information about environmental gas readings and their movements. So with some upcoming data pipeline changes, the rate of data growth is going to grow by a factor of 30, and that doesn't even include additional deployments. You know, before we used to say, let's say 10 years ago, when you thought about wearables that used and grasped and collected location technology, it was viewed 10 years ago as maybe this big brother that people didn't want us to invade into our private areas. But in today's environment, this is exactly the kind of data that we collect that's now fueling, for example, the digital empowerment. This is what we talk about at the beginning, the fourth industrial revolution. So taking advantage of all that amount of data, hundreds of billions of data points, it's really, truly impossible for a human to go through this tremendous amount of data, analyze it across multiple dimensions, and to garner insights quickly on a risk that a worker might be exposed to either currently or in the future if it weren't for artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence addresses the pain point of making sure that our workers are safety, especially if they're in the front line, if they're in the food processing plant, or they're in oil and gas. Because if you think about it, to analyze worker safety from every possible angle, you have to use, like Blackline Safety does, you have to use machine language algorithms. You have to use AI modules to understand the risk associated with a worker's behavior in the environment. I think the key for AI applications, for example, in this instance, is to learn from the mountains of data that was gathered historically, including incidences and near misses, and combine it with other information, such as safety software scheduling, task management. And all these together, for example, can address the pain point is, how do I make sure that our workers are safe?
Thank you, Dr. Bo-Linn.
Mhm.
We've spoken from a data perspective and pushing it to the humans or the people as a recipient or the beneficiary
Yeah.
of the output that the data processed through the AI engine and so on,
Mhm.
right? So let's talk about the people side of things, okay? So earlier on, we talked about them being as a beneficiary, right? As a recipient of the output of
Yes.
data. But from the perspective of um, mindset, right? Do you face lots of problems or resistance posed by these workers as a participant rather than a beneficiary? So if you are in an organization that is very AI oriented, that's very automation oriented, right? Would you be worried? Would you be concerned about the level of technology, the pace, the rate of change that the organization is adopting, and shifting the role of the humans or the workers from a recipient beneficiary role to a participant who is going to be displaced by such technologies? What are your thoughts to it? What kind of resistance, if any, will be posed by them? What kind of apprehension, what kind of skepticism or fear that you see this happening in the workplace?
Yeah, Nazri, that's actually a very good point. Think about it. For AI to be effective, it has to be enterprise-wide deployment. An enterprise-wide deployment is what is needed. However, in some companies, AI is like a lightning rod because a lot of people, they don't want to change. And change, as you know, Nazri, is not easy. It's a natural tendency to resist that. But in order for AI to work, you need to feed the animal. You need to get a lot of information. You need to get everybody in the enterprise, or the majority of the people in the enterprise who have a critical role, to feed that information so that the computer can learn. Remember, like I said at the beginning, it's not, you know, okay, I'll write lines of code and then the computer will think. It has to feed on all the information. And I think one area we can do better, Nazri, is I think we need to market the benefits of AI differently. Maybe not as a pure play technology, but maybe as a form of automation. A second point, to try to mitigate some of the resistance to artificial intelligence, is we need to be more effective in change management. Let's say change the mindset of the people. Let's look at black line safety as an example. Their current clients work in environments where there's a real threat to safety every day. Like I said, the oil and gas area, some of the food processing plants, etc. Each worker understands the risk, but they share a common goal of wanting to come home safely each and every day. So therefore, they are encouraged and motivated to wear these AI-infused devices. Before, perhaps there was concern over the use of AI technology, be it privacy or whatever. Recent feedback has been such that they receive from the field is often that the spouses won't let their partner work with any company for which wearable safety technology is not available or mandatory. That's a powerful message to get other people to start using and seeing the benefits of AI. So I say change management is a key resistance to many of the companies, and perhaps why it has not been embraced as fast as we would like to, or the benefits, reap the benefits as quickly as it could be, because artificial intelligence and all these digital technologies, it's going to change workflows. It's going to change procedures. It's going to change policies. And then when you have all these connectivity and automation, that's another series of changes. So through simple conversation, maybe we need to straightforward just to cut through some of the jargon and get to the point that a basic benefit of artificial intelligence is automating this information and integrated and connected working technologies so that it's in the best interest to ensure safety and efficient workplace. So I think resistance to change, and then just calling it just a technology is probably impedes the adoption of artificial intelligence.
Thank you for the excellent explanation, Dr. Bo-Linn. Based on the examples you've cited, so you think that the issues that arise from the change management factor, do you think it's more of attitudinal kind of consideration or factor, or is it a capability issue, i.e. the competency issue, or is it a matter of economic issue, cost benefit from the perspective of the workers? So if I'm an individual, do you think that I am being driven by my perception of what technology is going to replace my job and therefore I should resist it? Or is it a matter of me lacking behind in terms of catching up with the required skill set to be able to survive in the company and become relevant? Or is it more of what's in it for me? So I know these three dynamics constantly play in anybody's mind, but in the examples that you cited, which of these three dynamics are basically dominating the mindset of the workers in general? Of course, everybody's different, right?
Right,
but
right.
essentially, on an aggregate basis, what should be what should be the concerns of employers? Or what sort of ranking order or pecking order should we expect from these three dynamics?
Yeah, good point, Reggie. I think all three come into play. There is a hidden or actually quite obvious to some workers that artificial intelligence will replace them. However, what we ought to think about is how they will complement them. But they won't accept that premise unless the corporation takes on the mission that says, okay, if a lot of this work is automated and you used to have responsibility for the manual processing of the data, corporations have a responsibility, in my opinion, to be able to retrain or give that worker another set of higher level skills. So some of the other skills and other activities, mundane ones especially, can be done by digital technologies such as artificial intelligence. You brought up a good point about the economics. A lot of times the economics are there, but still there's a little bit of hesitation. Let me give you an example where there's huge economics in using artificial intelligence and other digital technologies, and how a company can augment the human brain and simulate human capabilities. One of the fast growth data analytics company that comes to bear in mind is CE.A.I Health out here on the West Coast. It's under the leadership of CEO John Kelly, and I've had a chance to look at it. It's positioned to deploy AI and machine learning at the center of structured and unstructured data analytics. Its platform offers automated objective neural imaging to radiologists and treating providers who can help you detect, quantify, and analyze brain function significantly less time compared to other prescriptive tools. So it's a great example of software delivering simulated brain functionality. But why isn't, what do we need to do to get it adopted, these kind of companies, their software adopted faster? Envision this. The brain is like a pharmaceutical company that produces its own drug per the needs of the body, okay? The brain changes during the day with different responses. We could deploy dynamic computing with AI algorithms and analyze the data and match the brain images with the biomarkers, delivering real-time insight that our medical team can then take prescriptive action, do greater diagnosis, treat with more accuracy. So yeah, essentially what you have at CE.A.I Health and other companies, I'd say a medical analytics as a service, which improves patient outcomes, reduces misdiagnosis, and lowers healthcare costs in fields such as heart disease, lung, and autism and oncology. So CE.A.I Health's future use of AI makes a difference in people's lives and save lives. And so the question is, in the overall field of AI, what can we do to make adoption of AI and other digital technologies within the digital transformation framework be adopted faster and more profusely? Corporations have responsibility to educate, to do like I said before, do a better job of change management and marking the benefits. Because like you said at the beginning, Nazri, these three things come into play. Each one in itself could impede the adoption of artificial intelligence. And as you can see, there's an awful lot of benefits. And let me use one more example. We were talking about it earlier, Nazri, in our remarks. Let's talk about COVID. You know, why this conference is virtual because of COVID. One more case study is Blackline Safety. They, like other companies, though Blackline is the leader, they created a comprehensive contact tracing solution. So when COVID emerged last spring, they were already streaming all this data collected from all these employees and individuals wearing these AI-infused wearables. But unlike smartphone apps offered by the government, what's good about this one and is in that companies like and the employees like, because they're always scared of invasion of privacy, is this solution is operated and controlled directly by the organization, not the government. So herein, these kind of cases deliver a complete solution that can be deployed anywhere, particularly in facilities where smartphones cannot be using, creating an obvious gap that we need to resolve and bridge, because COVID, as you can tell by today's numbers, is not going away anytime soon. So how artificial intelligence helps in this particular example, as well as others, that it traces points of contact between individuals, wherever these interactions may occur, and it proactively notifies users of close proximity to others who may now or later contract the disease. You know, there's a lot of coverage about the coronavirus in the media. And one thing I can say, it's proven to be a very motivating topic for businesses to do contact tracing to ensure sustainable operations. Because if not, with all the laws, it's going to be shut down, especially with all the various employees getting sick. So working with management and teams, enterprises ought to harness the power of connectivity and location technology and overall artificial intelligence to keep everyone healthy and safe. And if there was more adoption of it, more widespread, I would think that next year, this conference under your leadership, Nazri, will be in person, is what I'm hoping.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bo-Linn, for your kind words. For those members of the audience who just joined in, the last question that we asked was about the types of issues that AI poses, both good and bad. And of course, on the challenge part will be whether it's a change management issue, which relates to the attitudinal consideration, but it's a capability issue, which is on competency, on whether it's an economic issue in terms of cost benefit from the minds of the workers. Now, still holding on to that question, Dr. Bo-Linn, is that the topic today, it's about digital transformation, right? How it's going to impact us socially, personally, as well as corporate-wise, institutionally. Now, you've mentioned a couple of examples of what AI and how AI can impact us. You talked about CE.A.I Health, right? Was it CE.A.I Health and Blackline Safety?
Yes.
So these are technologies or AI technologies that relates to the healthcare. You know, the part about personal well-being, health, COVID testing, diagnosing illnesses, prescribing and predicting illnesses, right, that are likely to happen. So it's about survival for humankind, for society. Now, on the other hand, there was an example that we discussed or you cited in terms of the business health, which is productivity and automation. So the second kind of AI technology not just relate to people and their safety, well-being, as well as health, but also on the business health, which is about automating processes, okay, help to solve routine tasks, help to solve complex problems in an organization. So one relates to personal well-being and safety, the other one relates to the organizational productivity. So linking this to the earlier questions I asked, whether it's an attitudinal, whether it's a competency, whether it's cost benefit consideration, right? Does it matter for any workers or personnel whether they belong to each of these category that they impacted on? For example, if you work in the healthcare industry and you have all this innovative technology happening and you have no choice but to embrace it because it's to save lives, right? But would it matter to the personnel if he or she would have worked in an organization that does not involve personal healthcare or well-being, but more on processes, automation, complex decision making, right? Processes and all that, and they have technology that will help them to improve their productivity levels, that they help them to do their job better, and hence along the way some of them would have felt that they will be threatened by the job displacement. So I'm just trying to be granular about this, right? Don't intend to go so micro. I'm trying to think from the mindset of the personnel. If I work as a doctor, as a nurse, as a healthcare officer, or as a pharmaceutical personnel versus if I work as a manager of operations and admin, right, or production, right? Would my mindset be different when it comes to digital disruption, when it comes to digital transformation embraced by the organization? There's no right or wrong answer to this, yeah, for the audience, I'm sure, but I was just keen to hear your lenses, how you interpret this situation. Over to you, Dr. Bo-Linn.
Well, here's a good point. Here's a couple of things to think about. If we deploy digital technologies and digital transformation, including artificial intelligence, big data analytics, blockchain, what have you, if we deploy it effectively and successfully, then the end users don't have to worry about the technology. They only have to receive the benefits of the technology. And the benefits of technologies are quite strong. Secondly, let's say for a company, especially millennials, they want to work for a company that is current and relevant, that has adopted some of the most current technologies and deployments thereof. So basically, so they could put it on their resume for the next job. Who ever heard of a company, of a individual, a young individual or any individual who wants to work for a company that doesn't use computers? So AI and these kind of digital technologies are mainstay. These are like the kind of things that makes a company inviting to prospective employers. And also it helps a company be competitive. What is the nerve of a company? A nerve of a company is being able to make smart, quick, relevant decisions. And to make those decisions, you have to collect the right, not lots and lots of data, but more importantly, the right kind of data, crunch it, and make intelligence out of it. If you don't adopt any of this, how is that going to happen? You're going to be behind the 8 ball, and you will not be competitive. If you don't use these kind of technologies, one key thing when you look at the top performing companies is to be able to see around the corner, anticipate what might happen, apply a set of risk lens on it. All these kinds of digital technologies are going to help a company and all the executives who have to look at their dashboards to see how their company is running and to make improvements, continually recalibrate, and with the board, continually recalibrate, you know, what are we doing? What should we be doing? What's coming around the corner? What should we anticipate as risk and threats and those kind of things? And it's these kind of technologies that make it possible. So I think you are disadvantaged if you don't embrace artificial intelligence and all these other kind of digital technologies we've been looking at. But one thing we have to be a little bit careful of, AI is, Nazri, AI is thought of, it's very glamorous, very glamorous technology. And it's really sprouted or has its roots in acting similar to, I'd say, neural networks. We're training these machines to highlight signals and extrapolate from enormous amounts of data. But one thing we have to be careful of, there's a lot of issues. We have to be careful of and cautious of how do we interpret the purpose and capacity of AI. We have to be careful of the biases in the data that we collect. We have to be careful that we ensure data governance and privacy. We need to make sure we know how to correctly understand, navigate, and implement all the way from the technology team to personnel at all levels, all the way up to the board, how you can effectively use technology or the data. We have to make sure that there's alignment and a realistic expectation of what AI can deliver in the early days of adoption, all the way to those mature companies who are quite far in their digitization and automated future. We need to think about AI within a risk framework and then change management like we discussed before. We need to make sure we understand it's a cultural shift. Once again, I can't stress enough, AI and digital transformation is a competitive advantage for all kinds of companies. All levels of an organization should know and understand the promise of data, what data is available to them, and how to digitize all these processes so they can think and make decisions in a very holistic fashion. So that's my set of optics on why I think that AI and digital technology, digital transformation is so key now and in the future. Let's use a case in point. Let's go back to COVID. I work for Peritus Partners. We had a big uptick in business because all of a sudden when COVID hit, in a matter of days, we had to take all these people, as you well know, Nazri, all the people from an office environment and get them into a remote environment. And we did it through digital transformation. So I hate to say maybe the only good thing about COVID, it propelled corporations adopting and aggressively embracing digital transformation because nobody could be in the office because of legislation and safety reasons, etc.
Thank you so much for that. And your answers could not have come more timely because there's a question by the member of the audience who asked, with the rapid digital transformation in all life aspects, including the examples you cited in the era of IR 4.0, what will be the ethical consequence of such transformation in terms of responsibility? I mean, you've spoken about the need to be responsible, the need to be cognizant of how we deal with them, to be responsible of how we do with them. But at the end of the day, right, what will be the consequence of such digital transformation that will impact people? Do you see more breaches being committed? Because sometimes in the world of AI ethics, right, some people said yesterday that it's not about right or wrong. It may be the right thing, it may not be illegal, but is it the right thing to do? It's not illegal to extract public information from people, right, in their social media, in their lifestyle posts that they made. But is it ethical for us to use AI to try to extrapolate their health, like lifestyle, their financial well-being or health, right? Their family togetherness, or predicting whether they get into a separation mode, right? So it's not illegal, but is this? This is just one of the examples I can think of. But the panelists yesterday commented, doesn't mean it's not illegal. Doesn't mean it may be the right thing to do. What are your thoughts to it, Dr. Bo-Linn?
Yeah, good point. My personal thoughts are as following, especially as technologies, is we need to be value driven. If you look at the corporations, you could do a lot of things that perhaps were not illegal, but they were not right for the employees. they are not aligned with best practices, as an example. So I think what we need to be cognizant of is AI could take over the whole thing, but realize human beings aren't going to be 100% replaced. We're the ones that are still, to be honest, designing some of the algorithms or making decisions in the early adoptions of AI of what goes into it. What we have to be careful of is, one, is we don't sabotage, but instead add to our corporate value structure, which is aligned to our brand. So just because it's not illegal doesn't make it right that you should do it. Let's use privacy. Privacy, there's laws, a lot of laws in place. In the US, there's 50 different laws in regards to privacy. Each state has its own, unfortunately, and it's not uniform. So we're governed along the lines of legislation. But some of the things may not be, or they may be a loophole. I think we should not take advantage of the loophole. But let's face it, if you look at what's going on now across all ages, for example, most of the people, I'd say a great majority of the people, which is why some of these social networking apps have grown so fast, even though they put in front of you a privacy statement, most people don't read it. And therefore, you click on it because you want the free app. Well, you have done your part, which is all you can do, but the responsibility now is on the end user who clicks and wants to use the app. So there's responsibilities on both sides. It's not just the corporation, it's not just the government, but also the individual itself. But bottom line, what I think is most important is to realize you have to align your actions as it relates to technology and other achievements according to the values. You better be careful of unconscious bias as well. What we need to do is figure out how these technologies augment our daily lives and what we need to get done faster, quicker, more effectively. So it comes down to value statement.
Very good. Thank you for that. It's a really important point for organizations and their people to consider to basically align the values, more so than ever.
I think it's your social and corporate responsibility. And it starts from the top all the way through the organization, from top to down.
Excellent. Now, I'm not sure whether it's a fair question to ask you, but this is an ad hoc question, right? A bonus question, so to speak, for the audience to pick a little bit of your thoughts. So now that the presidential elections are over, we have a new president, right? And we look up to what he's going to do for the global economy. We look at how things are going to change, hopefully for the better. And especially when it regards to economic global growth, economic expansion, and more importantly about understanding what is his trajectory, or what is his penchant for technology under the new presidency, new president Joe Biden. So do you think that AI technology is going to be more widely adopted in the States and permits it to the rest of the world with the new policies or new programs that are going to be initiated by the new president? Again, we're not talking about politics here, but we're talking about the economic policies that will then transcend into, industry growth, industry sector development through technology transformation, i.e. digital transformation, which is the topic of today's Fireside Chat. So would that have any impact, or will things just be status quo compared to the previous president? What are your thoughts on it?
I think if you look at what's happened last week and what's happening this week, he's beginning to outline his cabinets and his team and how it looked like, as well as he's putting into place what his vision and what his priorities are. We know the first two is getting a handle of COVID, right? And then I already talked about how artificial intelligence could help us in COVID tracing, etc. But I would think he's going to make this presidency and articulate his vision, whatever it is, it's going to be Joe Biden's vision, and he will adopt what he thinks is the best practices from other presidents such as Obama. So I think technology is going to be a key part of it, because he wants to get as soon as we get a good handle on COVID, he needs to get the growth engine of economy, the growth of economy propelled again. And the way he needs to do that is by adopting technology. There's nothing so far that we have seen that he wouldn't do that. I think he's going to embrace technology throughout everything. And he already embraces science, as you can tell. He listens to the scientists. So I anticipate that will be a key part of his vision and his framework for governing. You know, if you think about it, and let me use an example of AI, there's a lot of interesting things going on. You know, if you look at nanotechnology, which has been in the press a lot, think of, as an example, a bunch of small robots. Robots are getting smaller and smaller. And we are, in prototype, going to be able to insert them, as well as sensors, into our bodies to repair damaged or aging tissue by themselves. So skins with sensors can collect all this information, external and internal to the body, using AI tools and analyzing all this data. The reason I talk about these, this is the kind of innovation that I believe, from what I have read, will be propelled by this next administration, because he does listen to the scientists and he does embrace technology. So I anticipate, you know, areas, industries that have the need for predictive analytics, prescriptive analytics, adaptive analytics, autonomous functionality. All of those will come into play in the new administration.
That's extremely useful advice or insights there, Dr. Bo-Linn. We have less than 5 minutes to close out the session, but we have benefited so much from you thus far. There's one more question coming in from Professor Dr. Selvaraj, who has made a comment that AI has made possible for customers for more accurate information, right? By distilling or information from public and private sources, I'm sure. The challenge is always to be in compliance with regulatory rules on privacy. Something you mentioned earlier about doesn't mean it's not illegal. It may not be the right thing, right? The right ethical thing to do. So for Prof. Selvaraj, who has made this comment, it resonates well to what has been discussed earlier. But does Dr. Bo-Linn has anything more to add with regards to the compliance with regulatory rules on privacy, i.e., have there been enough clarity or adequacy on the part of regulators to implement, checks and balances or ring fencing the level of privacy accorded to the consumers in general, notwithstanding that they like to publish public things anyway, but holding that aside, holding that constant, do you think that governments all over the world, where you are familiar with, are there sufficient procedures or rules on protecting privacy on behalf of people? Or do you think it's too much? When is too much, when is too little? Over to you, Dr. Bo-Linn.
Yeah, good point. So let me give you a food for thought. At the beginning, what I shared with you is technology innovation is doubling every 2 years, and it's evolving exponentially. For the most part, governments do not act that quickly. And so therefore, there's a gap between being able to do this with this technology and the regulatory policies and legislation that must be in place, because the latter takes more time, as we can tell, just like we saw in the internet. I think what we need to think about is the following. These digital technologies, digital transformations, makes the impossible possible. We need to have that kind of clean slate, innovative thinking to drive the economy for the betterment of our lifestyles, etc. But once again, we need to, even though there are not laws behind it, we need to do the right thing. As far as collection of information, right? There's a lot of ways we can get great insight out of it. And out of data, get some great intelligence or intelligentsia. But what we can do is think about it. Maybe we look at all this data and we can aggregate it. There's still a lot of value in that. Because in my opinion, data and intelligence is power. What we have to do, as you know, when you look through history, is how do you effectively and properly use the power for which you have developed through technology. Embrace it, but also take on the responsibility of your inventions.
Thank you, Dr. Cheemin, Dr. Bo-Linn.
You're welcome.
Now, my last question for you to wrap up this exciting and enlightening fireside chat. Yeah? And we hope you can stay on for our next session on board effectiveness together with other esteemed panelists. Now, the last question for you is that how would the future be like if the technologies you mentioned, right, whether from Sarah Health or Black Line Safeties and the likes of it, you know, and IBM, you know, continues to evolve the level of sophistication in AI. What will happen if this continue to evolve, and what advice would you give to the audience who's listening in, or even to board members, right? If you're an individual or you're a worker or you're a board director, right? What advice would you give as the evolution of AI continues aggressively and rapidly? And then we can wrap up this session in entirety. Thank you.
Good point. Let me kind of leave you this thought. There was a philosopher called Heraclitus. He lived 2,600 years ago, and he wrote one thing, and I'm going to quote it, but think of this in the context of technology innovation, AI, etc. Nothing endures but change. We underestimate its pace at our own peril, our own peril. So think of that in the context of artificial intelligence and all of these other innovative. Embrace it, but also push it forward. There's nothing worse than a company and great minds like all of us on this line who don't embrace what is possible. Think of it. With AI, we're creating through hardware and software the cognitive abilities similar to those of an animal or a human brain. We're essentially creating an artificial brain. Don't waste it. It's in our control.
Short and sweet, brilliant statement from Dr. Bo-Linn. Thank you so much for your insightful inputs and wise choice of words and points, right, for all of us here. So thank you once again on behalf of MyFinB, the organizer. And thank you for tuning in from Silicon Valley or San Jose, California, right? I know it's like past 6 p.m. there, but we hope that you can stay on, continue to engage the participants with their Q&A, which has been answered for most parts. It's just that there's one question coming in, but I guess we can take it offline to continue the discussion further. But anyway, thank you so much, Dr. Bo-Linn. We've benefited. I personally learned a lot from you, and let's get connected. Let's explore collaboration, not just with us, but with the other panelists, moderators, and members of the audience, right? So there is a portal, a virtual community that is made available for all speakers, moderators, and participants to interact with one another. So we hope that you can make yourself, make your presence be felt there, and continue to illuminate us with your wise thoughts and inputs. Yeah. So thank you once again, Dr. Bo-Linn. It's a pleasure.
And you know what, Nazri, my wish is, and thank you so much, all of you, for participating, inviting me to be your keynote fireside chat. My wish is that all of us stay safe, and then I will see you on the other side of COVID at the next conference, Nazri, under your leadership. So thank you so much for the honor of being here and sharing my perspective. I sincerely appreciate it. And I thank you and the team for putting this, what I have seen thus far on day 2, this very successful, enlightening conference. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your support.